Real Frank.
Hello, welcome to Real Frank Movie Reviews. In this episode, we're going to review the movie Cry Macho. A one-time rodeo star and washed-up horse breeder takes a job to bring a man's son home and away from his alcoholic mom. On their journey, the horseman finds redemption through teaching the boy what it means to be a good man. Now in this episode, we have a very special guest reviewer. In the previous ones, you've seen some of my friends and family members, but this person, we connected, and he's the first person that I truly don't know and met through the show and interest in doing the show and his love for movies. So let me introduce you to ZACK. ZACK, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for that intro. Excited to be here.
Yes. They love you. They love
Got
you.
the audience going. I like that.
Yes, we have a little soundboard here.
Great.
Thanks for doing this, and this is very exciting because you're the first real non-person that I've known to do this. So it's very exciting, and this is always how I dreamed the show to be. Like, everyone have the option and opinion to voice it through their choice of movie, because everyone's pretty passionate about talking about movies, and I think it's fun to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited that we connected and we got this whole thing worked out.
Your background there is great. Cry Macho, Clint Eastwood.
Thanks.
Tells everything about it. So let's start off. Let's talk about the story. So we heard the synopsis here. What did you think of the overall story?
I mean, I gotta say, my feelings overall are pretty lukewarm on this one. And the story is a big part of that, particularly the pacing of the story. I don't know. What did you think?
I agree. I don't know. I've seen a lot of Clint Eastwood's movies, ones that he's both acted and directed in, and to me, this one seemed like one of his worst ones, in my opinion.
Yeah. It felt like, overall, it felt kind of pointless. You know, it kind of felt like it went nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, the story.
It's kind of like him. This is how I best can describe it, in my opinion, is he looks really old and really fragile, and this is kind of how this movie is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that he's still going so strong and everything, but man, the way that he carries himself in this, how old is he now? He's 90 or something, right?
Yeah.
And he looks it. And it gets a little hard to believe at some points in the story, you know, this 90-year-old guy going around punching people in the face and being, Clint Eastwood.
Exactly. That's one of my scenes that annoyed me the most, was the scene you're describing. Is they try to snap, he has the boy, and then the boy goes outside, and then one of the mom's gangster crew people snags the boy, and Clint punches him in the face, and the way it shot was the most slow motion punch.
Yeah, and it looks like his hand should have just shattered.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then so one of the mom's goons has the young boy, the son, that he's trying to take home to Texas, and like you said, Jack, he just sort of slowly punches at the guy's face, and the guy, I mean, one punch from this 90-year-old man, and this young strapping henchman backs off and is oh, better not get involved in this anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Clint.
Yeah, there's so much power in that punch that scared this young little hot rod over here. It was pretty comical. In that scene.
Yeah. I was thinking though, watching it, it is nice to see an old person on screen who's not digitally de-aged though. I was kind of having some flashbacks to The Irishman.
Yes.
And just how bad that looked, and all every time they do it in the Marvel movies, the Disney stuff, it's hit or miss, but it was just nice to actually see an old person looking old.
Yeah, right. I mean, from that point, I totally agree 100%. And that usually when you get to that age, I don't want to generalize, but your mind starts to go. But it's still remarkable that he can still act and direct, even though some of the parts in this were kind of ridiculous from the standpoint of how old and fragile he looks. But that's pretty special.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all props to Clint Eastwood for like still going as strong as he is. But it did feel like a little bit of a disconnect for the movie, because I have to wonder, they never explicitly say how old the character is supposed to be, but it feels like the character is probably supposed to be at least like 15 or 20 years younger than Clint Eastwood actually is. So it did make it a little bit hard to like fully get on board.
Yeah, and do you think during the filming of this movie they had a lot of nap breaks? Like you had to have naps? Like
they must have, yeah.
I gotta take a nap just to get through it.
Well, I mean, Clint Eastwood famously, I think, like wraps all of his scenes in like 1 or 2 takes. So, I'm sure that that has an effect on the movie and the performances, for better or for worse sometimes. But I'm sure that left plenty of time for going back to the trailer for a little lie down.
Yeah, and even the way he walks, like watching him walk was hard to watch because it's not even walking. It's like when people are really old, like almost to that walker wheelchair phase, they're scuffling. Like they got the hunch over back and they're scuffling when they walk.
Yeah. Watching Clint Eastwood at this age really reminds me of a great uncle that I had who passed on a few years ago, but he got up to about 100 years old. And the way that Clint Eastwood kind of carries himself these days, and the way that he kind of speaks and sounds, it really reminds me of this like great uncle of mine. And I don't want to harp on too much about how old Clint Eastwood is and looks, now, but yeah, I mean, then there's like the scenes where he's like constantly getting like in and out of cars and stuff. He's just like slowly like leaning down into the car.
It hurts you to watch it, but I think if this role, if he would have played a different role, not the tough guy role, like it wouldn't have been so bad. But he's supposed to be this main rodeo star, washed up tough guy kind of guy, it just didn't seem right for him. Like it should have been like somebody else, like to star in it, and maybe he could have been another part in it, like not so much the main guy.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to some of my other feelings about the movie. Like, I expected going into this movie from the trailers and, from what little I had kind of heard about it going into it, I expected more of like that kind of reflection on Clint Eastwood's, life and career and this like, this sort of tough macho persona that he's built over all these years. And there really wasn't much of that in the movie itself. They bring up a couple of themes like early on in some really on-the-nose dialogue, and then there's nothing for like the middle of the movie, and then at the end there's a couple more like really on-the-nose kind of lines about that, and that's really it. And Clint Eastwood's character didn't really feel like he had much of an arc, and certainly nothing relating to that theme.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Zach. The way they advertise it, you're right. He's like, oh my God, this is kind of a wrap-up movie of all his careers, of him reminiscing and how it's not worth sometimes to be a tough guy. And then you watch this, and it really has nothing to do except for a couple lines he shares with the kid. Except maybe the
dialogue that, like I said, is really on the nose. I have notes in front of me. I wrote down some of it, like the boy says stuff like, on the street I trust no one, but it's safer than home. And Clint Eastwood's like, nobody cares about that macho stuff in Texas. And at the end, he says like, that macho stuff is overrated. You think you know all the answers, then you get older and realize you know nothing. And those lines didn't really have much bearing on like anything that we actually saw those characters going through in the movie.
Exactly. I'm glad you had those lines, because those were basically the pinnacle of what we would have thought we would have saw in the trailer of the movie, which was maybe 3-5 seconds long in the entire movie.
Yeah. A couple lines at the beginning, couple lines at the end, and that's all that we really got for those themes.
That's it. And then the real tough guy, in my opinion, was that rooster, Macho.
Oh yeah, Macho stole the show.
He did.
The rooster was great.
Do you think they had a stunt double rooster, like they had all these identical roosters in case one?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there were like 6 or 10 lassies over the course of the show. I'm sure that there were a few machos running around on set. But I don't know how much do we kind of get into spoilers here? Not that there's a whole lot to spoil in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much tell everything in the trailer. Well, they mislead you in the trailer, but I mean, the synopsis kind of tells you everything. You just don't know what if the dad gets the boy or not. That's really the only thing you don't really know. I mean,
right? Yeah. So I think if we're coming to it, all I was going to say there is Macho literally saves the day at the end in the climax there. I mean, he's definitely the hero of the story.
He was, and I mean, there's no way that Clint could have done it. I mean, even that whole entire scene was silly, right? When
it was silly. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
Well, so, I mean, it was silly, but it was also, I was saying that some of my problems with this movie were the pacing. So, like, the first act of the movie, to me, felt like it was just jumping at, like, breakneck speed from plot point to plot point to plot point. It's like the movie opens with Clint Eastwood's character Mike getting fired. And then there's some opening credits, and then the very next scene is 1 year later, and Dwight Yoakam is hiring him to go and kidnap his son. And we don't see anything in between. Like, we don't see Clint Eastwood getting to, like, a low point and getting desperate enough to take this job. It's just, you're fired. Okay. Go find my son. Okay. And then he goes, and he's there. He's in Mexico. He's, like, talking to the mom, and she says something like, go ahead and try to find Raffo, but you'll never find him. And then the very next scene, he's just right there where the kid is at the cockfight. So, I don't need to run through the entire plot of the movie, but it's like jump from plot point to plot point to plot point. Then the second act kind of slows down, and that was the stuff that I enjoyed more. They're on the road, and they run into some conflicts, some complications, and then it felt in the last maybe 20 minutes of the movie like they suddenly remembered they had to end the movie, so they just get back on the road. A couple more complications come up, and they're resolved immediately and kind of anticlimactically, and then they just kind of go their separate ways.
You did a fantastic job of describing this movie. The fact that, like you were talking about in the beginning, when he sees the mom, he just walks through this mansion house with all these guards, people, and cameras. Just walks in, says, hey, and there they just put him to the side, hey, and bring him to the big boss lady, and, I'm looking for your son. Oh, and everything's all peachy. It was very, very strange. Like you said, you described it pretty great, and then the ending, they didn't know, maybe it's close to nap time, and they had to wrap it up, and they're like, all right, we got to end this. So let's cut it. But yeah, fantastic. The one other thing that I found very comical to me was when he's got that love interest, Martha, I believe her name was, and they're all at the table, and they talk about the kids at the table, talk about that they can tell that each one of them like each other, and when he gets embarrassed or he's trying to show that he has affection for her, the creepiness of the way they show him, like the Joker smile, it almost looked like. It was very uncomfortable to watch, but comical at the same time, because it just
a little bit, yeah.
It just looked a little awkward and not natural at all.
I was gonna say, I think what I found kind of comical in the movie, and not like that, kind of not in a good way, is so they spend most of the second act in this little town with Marta, and there's this character, he calls himself the sheriff, but Marta calls him the deputy. And the whole time he's very suspicious of the Clint Eastwood's character, the gringo in town. And you think you're not quite sure, have the mom's henchmen kind of gotten to him? Is he looking for Clint for them? Have the federales kind of gotten to him? You don't know why he's so suspicious, kind of dangerous. And then that all kind of culminates in Clint Eastwood's character has kind of become the unofficial little vet for the town. So this sheriff guy brings his wife and their old dog over and says help my wife fix our dog. And Clint Eastwood just says, in a great line, a line that I really enjoyed, he turns to the boy and he says, I don't know how to fix old. And that was great. But then his advice is just, the dog's tired. Let him sleep in bed with you tonight. And then that's it. They go home, and then the very next time we see this character, he's willing to lie to the antagonists to protect Clint Eastwood. He was like, that was enough to do it for you? Telling you to just let your dog sleep in bed at night.
Yeah, that was pretty odd. I agree with that. It's very entertaining from the perspective of what was his character's true meaning, and then to be bought out just for some nice kind words about their dog.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's sort of emblematic of like the whole movie. It kind of meandered. It didn't really execute a lot of its themes very well or its ideas very well. And when it did, it felt like things were just happening because that's sort of where the plot needed them to go. Like, they need to get this sheriff on their side, so it just sort of happens. He gives them some good advice about the dog. They need to get back to finish up like the journey, and there need to be complications on the way. Okay, well, the bad guys just chase them for a little while and then stop. They get clawed at by the rooster.
That's it. The rooster. The rooster's the hero. So let's talk about the acting. How would you feel about the acting in it? Or let's start with rating. We'll just go ahead and just rate this. What do you give the story? 1 to 10.
I mean, I'm probably at like a 4 or a 5.
Okay.
Out of 10.
So like a 4.5 or something like that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the acting. What did you think about the overall acting and the actors in this movie?
Well, we kind of talked about Clint in it. You know, he's not bad, I don't think. It's just kind of hard to buy him in this role at his age. You know, the other main character, the younger boy, the son, his acting was very spotty. And
thank you for pointing that out, because I couldn't agree more. He became annoying to me because in the beginning, when they were having cocktails, and it just seemed like he was overacting, like, you know what I mean? Someone who's new to acting, like, very expressionated unnecessarily. Like, who's going to talk like that in that type of conversation?
And this is something that I think, because I haven't seen too many of Clint Eastwood's recent movies. The last one that really comes to mind, which I think is a good comparison, is Gran Torino. Did you see that one?
Yes, I actually like that movie a lot. But
me too. Yeah, I liked that one a lot. I think it did a great job of kind of being a reflection of Clint Eastwood's life and legacy, and you know, in his roles and everything. But it also had some very bad acting on from some of the other characters.
Sure.
Especially the younger people, because that one he was, you know, interacting a lot with these younger, I think they were maybe Southeast Asian, like brother and sister, and their acting in that movie was bad. And I thought Raffo in this one was better, but yeah, like I said, very shaky. And you know, I mentioned like Clint Eastwood is pretty famous for like 1 or 2 takes and that's it. And I kind of, you know, I have to wonder if some of these like performance issues from especially some of these like younger actors, maybe foreign actors, is the directing. Is he not really bringing out a great performance in them because he's just, wrap it up, let's get through the scene, get to the next one.
Could be true, because you're right, because it was spotty through time. Some didn't look too bad, and then there was points you're just like, wow, they let that go through. How about the rest of the cast? I mean, Macho's a star.
The rest of the cast, yeah, exactly. Macho can do no wrong. Macho is flawless. The rest of the cast, I think there isn't as much to say. You know, Dwight Yoakam was in it very little, but he's always good. The actress who played Marta was good. I mean, she spoke almost no English in this, and I don't speak Spanish fluently, so her performance seemed fine to me. It's a little hard to tell. You know, a couple of the other little performances here and there, like the antagonist guy, the mom's like henchman that was sort of constantly on their tail, was also a little kind of shaky.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So how would you rate the acting?
The acting is probably a pretty solid 4. I mean, there was some below average at best, and the acting that was better didn't elevate it. Agreed.
Cinematography. I mean, how they shot it, how it was filmed, the background stuff, the camera angles and stuff like that. What was your overall opinion about that in this movie?
I got no complaints about the cinematography. I thought everything was pretty good. Not a ton. None of it really stood out to me. Yeah. You know, I made some notes while I was watching. There's a lot. There's a lot of the other elements of the film that I could talk about just like for hours. The cinematography, nothing outstanding, nothing really like blew me away with it. But yeah, I have no complaints on that end.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really too much, I don't think, spectacular, like you said. All I can remember is there was a couple scenes, like, with the trucks driving around and they had, like, mountains and background shots. I thought those were kind of cool. A couple scenes like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, some great, like, desert landscape kind of stuff. Yeah.
I thought that was nice. And then some suns settings backgrounds. I thought those were beautiful. They looked really good. And CGI, I mean, I don't think there's really too much CGI unless they did a miraculous job with Macho. Unless Macho was CGI, because I would blow me away.
Yeah. I don't think there was any CGI. I mean, like I said, they didn't de-age, the older actors, which I think is great. And, so I'm kind of going to jump ahead a little bit here when I say this, but I did want to say, for people who might be a little bit hesitant on this movie because of the, like, animal violence element, because the trailers make it pretty clear this movie, part of the plot here involves cockfighting, and people might be a little wary of that. There's no animal violence on screen at all. None whatsoever. But they do show at a couple of points some animals with wounds, like lacerations, and I think those, presumably, hopefully, were CGI. That's probably the extent of the, like, noticeable kind of CGI, because it didn't really look like makeup stuff. I doubt they get these animals to, like, sit still for applying makeup over their fur and stuff. So that stuff was probably CGI, but that's about it. And that's kind of where it should be in something like this. You don't need a lot of CGI in this kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't made for CGI type of movie. So for my review, I kind of agree with you with the story. I give the story a 4.3, so we're pretty much eye to eye with that. I mean, just okay. I think it's a little different than what we thought. We were teased within the trailer. The acting, I scored it identically to you, 4. We're right on par here. Couldn't agree more. And cinematography, I gave it a 5 just because I did like those scenes with mountains and backdrops and stuff. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, even like maybe a 6, on cinematography, something like that. That the acting, the story and stuff, it's all below average, but it's not like infuriatingly or insultingly bad.
Right.
The cinematography is right there at average, maybe a little above. Like you said, there's some really nice shots of like the desert and stuff in there.
Yeah, but that's really it. And then CGI, I don't know what this. It's hard to rate because I don't know if that was makeup or CGI. You're probably right. It might have been CGI. Yeah. I don't know. The only real injury I can recall was it a goat or something that they had that little tear?
Yeah. There was a goat. There was a horse that had like a laceration on its flank or something. Yes. But there was also a goat or something like that. As Mike and Raffo are like kind of getting set up, getting settled in this little town, they start to help out with breaking horses, and Mike becomes this sort of an unofficial veterinarian in the town. So people bring to him some animals with wounds, and that's pretty much it.
All right. So overall, what do you give this score? 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst.
Overall, it's probably at about a 4 for me. It's a below average movie in its execution, in its handling of its pacing, its themes, its character development. Like I said before, it's not insultingly bad. I didn't feel like I wasted my time watching it, but it's not something that I would watch again, and it's probably not something I would recommend.
Yeah, I'm right on with you. I give it a 4.1. It was, like you said, I'm not angry at it. Like, I'm not angry I watched it. I'm kind of happy I watched it just because some of those parts that were bad were entertaining to me, because that's this kind of weird guy I am, That's like,
sure, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would never recommend this, and I would never want to see this again. Maybe if it was like on cable television, I happen to be flicking through and there's nothing on, I might watch a little bit of it and then move on. That's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because there were a few, like I said, the second act of the movie, the middle, there was some enjoyable stuff in there. That was where it kind of worked. And there's a few good lines here and there from Clint. Like I said, I can't fix old. Yeah. I mean, of all the self-reflection in this movie, maybe that's the height of it. And then I think there was a line when Raffo first tells him the rooster's name, and he just says, "If a guy wants to name his cock Macho, it's fine by me."
Right, that was a great line. So, in your opinion, Do you think this was his last movie?
I don't. I mean, he puts out a movie every year at this point, doesn't he? He basically makes a movie a year or so, and it doesn't seem like he's done. It doesn't seem like he wants to stop. I wouldn't be surprised if he keeps making them for a few more years until he physically can't.
Yeah. All right, Zach. Thanks for your input. Thanks for helping us review this movie. You end up giving it a 4.0 overall. I give it a 4.1. That's our review for Cry Macho. Thanks for watching.